Okay, well, while this slide is up, first I want to thank the gallery, mainly Sarah and Peter, for giving me the opportunity to show my work and speak tonight. It is a great pleasure to be showing my work here with the artist Ava Werner, who can't be here, but whose beautiful work is also on the walls on the opposite space. The slide up now is a word-for-word definition of shadow time, the title of our show, by the Bureau of Linguistical Reality, a group of artists who are developing new words to better accommodate what it means to be living in a time of rapid climate change, the theme of our show. I also want to thank Edith, not Edith, right? Edith Doran, for sharing this night of inspired discussion with me. And of course, thank you all for being here. The work I made for this show follows two ideas. One is a continuation of my exploration of the feminine divine, a subject I have dwelled on for years and is a concept I take seriously, that explores what women look like when they become original beings, and by original I mean divine, because they own themselves. And two, it is an elaboration on my matriarchal family line from Cape Cod, which is a fragile land existing in a complicated time, which climate change is in which climate change is affecting how we see ourselves, our children, our community, and our sense of time. Both these ideas require such sensitivity that combining them feels like putting together an intricate puzzle in which only the making of these paintings could articulate its forms. In them, you can find the exuberance, the urgency, and drama for the love of life, which extends itself to ideas of loss and turmoil, and what it means to simply exist in today's world. The paintings perform what I think life does. They collapse into fractals or moments of sheer color and magic, because there cannot always be words for what we feel, and we sometimes have to let go in order to see. Before we get to the works in the current show, I want to talk a little bit about how I found my focus on the feminine divine. My background as a painter involves excavating imagery about the representation of women and talking about it in drawings and paintings that connect with my own life as an artist and really as a mother too. During a difficult time in which my mother and youngest daughter were in hospitals virtually at the same time, I started to make a lot of paintings with the mother and child motif. I did a lot of research during this time on how women were historically represented, from their idealized position as caregivers or goddesses to faceless sex objects and destructive maniacs of war and death. The archetypes of femininity are ancient and continuously recontextualized. Ultimately, they are rendered as vessels to worship or distrust, depending on what the issue is and the cultural climate. Because of this show, and just where I was in my studio practice over the summer, I felt the need to leave behind some of the critical ideas about representation and move into a space that focused on aspects of healing and regrowth. This does not mean I am avoiding the tumult that is found in nearly every pocket of our existence today, and specifically for this show. I indeed focused on nature and climate change, but I also needed to issue a reprieve in the paintings because it seems it is in short supply. I stopped listening to people and started listening to plants a while back, and the transition has been glorious. So I left the figure behind and I moved to the garden. It served as a natural bridge. These paintings act like figures and portals at the same time. They are heavily focused on color and alchemy. Each has its own birth story that began with a painting recipe, an experiment, and a leap of faith. And the experiments did not always yield timely, successful paintings. They pushed and pulled. Sometimes the painting completely ripped off the canvas. Sometimes they went muddy, and I really had no idea if I was going to be ready for this show at all. I have an oath in painting. I follow it wherever it takes me, and will go with it as long as it takes or needs. And I guess it will do whatever it wants, because it proves time and time again that I have absolutely no power over its being. I am just facilitating. I am a hand and an arm and a person who can go to the art store to buy the paint, but I never feel like it is that I know what I make, and yet somehow I still do. Basically, my studio is one of carnage. The painting that you see on the left has been worked on for over 4 years and has approximately 20-ish paintings under it, and maybe 3 very successful ones that I mourned but knew they weren't for this time. There are paintings in the studio that go on and on. There are paintings in the studio that go on and on for years, and they know when to enter the world, but I do not. I feel guilty when I make a successful painting, but know that it is not in time. I have a terrible time sending it back into the void, but sometimes I have the task of being the executioner, because that is how my practice goes. So I am stressing the mistakes and failures that happen in painting because I see it as nature itself and a metaphor for the time we are living in, as well as the theme of our show. Our inability to grasp or understand the gravity of the situation seems very human and very messy when it seems society expects to understand everything all at once and exactly at the right time. These imperfections are where we grapple with our fate or destiny, but they are also places of magic and surreal beauty. I liken this to my family's roots on Cape Cod. My mother's family is from the Cape, and it is a place I visit often. We still own some of the original land bought by my great-great-grandmother. Because of this lineage of living so close to the water and on fragile land, I have a long narrative intact about how the Cape's infamous stormy weather has impacted our lives through generations. My family retells stories where the storms are so bad, the family's milking cow runs away again. Or the devastation of red tides on the oysters and clam beds, which are top secret locations. One never gives up their family's clam spot. Or the shock when unusual sea creatures swim to the Cape Cod Bay and take up residence for several days. These stories are the ones that my family tells through the decades of living there that are full of tragedy and magic. These stories are becoming more frightening because the land is increasingly more fragile and our future there more unstable. And because of this history and knowledge, I felt really close to the idea of this show titled Shadow Time. For me, Shadow Time is about being cognizant of how nature and even the universe impacts our sense of time and our position on this earth. How prolonged observations of nature can shift the ground under your feet and change how you see the world. When I became a mother, I really felt the impact of mortality and how I came from a lineage of women, one birthing the next, one dying before the other. I felt like I was on this sort of conveyor belt of mortality. In this sense, I'm aware of how fragile time is and how small we are, and yet our responsibility to grow and take care of people and the land and ultimately the earth feels enormous. My great-grandfather built his house on the Cape Cod beach that we still visit today, but because of beach erosion, my grandfather moved the actual house more inland, and it is the house we all stay in when we are there in the summer to this day. I use seascapes and water often in my work to express time in a fateful sense, but also in the earthly concept. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Some kind of window.
Okay. Oh. Like how tides are locked into 6-hour time frames, and monthly calendars are marked by plus and minus tides controlled by the moon. Just living so close to the water, out on a sliver of land curled in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, makes you an existentialist. you are in touch with how transitory life can be and how fast it can change or how dangerous it can suddenly become. It is my understanding that shadow time is about living in two different spaces at once. I interpreted this as the duality of magic and sorrow, and for me that means feeling it as a mother and artist. I believe in Jung's idea of the collective unconscious. Stories of the sea and outer space are thematically ominous and mysterious for a reason. It reaches back to the concepts of what it's like to be in the womb or how divine intervention manifests itself. We continue to expect to know what will happen, even though the failures and imperfections that I spoke about in my painting process are similar to our knowledge of what it means to be alive. At some point, I read a Japanese poem that said, "The tighter you hold the fish, the faster it gets away. Yet if we grip it too loose, it will also escape our grip." This is something I tell my students over and over again. There is something in the letting go. If we gift the act of participatory observation, meaning we are in tune, yet we do not demand anything at once, or if we remain simply open, we can bear witness to the surreal enchantment of possibility and solution. Living in this year of 2024, we know trauma, we know devastation, we know the divisive rhetoric that can separate us and push us away from each other. We are equipped with stories and knowledge of these contemporary problems. I did not focus on devastation in this body of work because I already know what that means and what that means for my children. This work is about unlocking the magic or universal truths that lie within and unite us to find what we need. That is all I have to say. Thank you again for coming out.
Do you want to do maybe a little Q&A
Sure.
if there are any cues? Or we can also mill around and we can find Melissa one-on-one as well. Does anyone have a particular question? All right, why don't we?
I'll ask the
okay.
question. As a complete non-artist, but one thing I was wondering, you said a lot of the paintings begin with a recipe.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So there was all different kinds of techniques that I used in these paintings, and I actually made, for the acrylic, I used several recipes for the acrylics, and then I also used oil paint, and I also used ink, and in some cases, I would actually try to make it have a reactive surface, actually in every case, in every painting that's in the show or part of the series. And so, they would have, something would happen where it would be some kind of crazy reaction that I had no idea, would have that effect. And that would kind of cajole or make the painting. There was never any kind of plan in mind, even though I kept having to coach myself through the process, it doesn't have to be flowers, it could be whatever, and I really didn't want to follow, and I don't follow any kind of, idea about subject. I just kind of melt into the philosophy that I'm kind of thinking of, and I allow that to run the show. So, there were just all kinds of recipes that I actually was kind of really mad that I didn't get to write them down as I was making them, because I forgot. I forgot them all.
All of them?
I've tried to do certain reactions. There is a painting of a flower, the pink flower in there.
It's actually up on the screen right now.
Oh, right, this painting. So the yellow that I poured into that blue, I watched these paintings, they're on the floor, they're made on the floor, I watched them. And it was doing its thing, it was very beautiful, I loved it. I turn my back, I usually have a painting that I'm finishing behind me, or something that I know is a little bit more like predictable. So I like turn around and I'm like working on the wall of a different painting. And then I turn around again and the yellow just like did this crazy thing. It just like went into all these particles around the spot where I poured it. So you actually like see this like yellow pattern that happened. And it had something to do with the alchemy of two different recipes. There were two different paintings. So the blue was a particular recipe and the yellow was a different one. But I had no idea that it was going to do that. And since then I have tried over and over again to get that reaction and have not been, I've been a little successful, but not like what happened there. And you know, like in this painting, for instance, like there is a particular, like I want the paint to be a little like sticky at times and kind of dry and almost like not good anymore, but like I would pour it and then it was like super shiny and beautiful, and I haven't been able to get that either. So yeah, no, I don't think there's, I have ideas, but I haven't been able to, and I haven't actually had the time either, but yeah, I don't know. It's a big question. Thanks for that. Yeah.
I have a question about the 5 paintings in one. Do you document all the successful paintings that you had to bury, or is it just in your memory?
Yeah, no, I actually started a photo album on the new year that was all my dead paintings of 2023. And they're in the thing, and I used to do that. I used to have like albums where I like just show all the work that never survived for the year. And it's like this, it's more paintings than I did, obviously. Yeah, so that's like the majority of my work is bad. You know, you get a handful of decent paintings and you have to completely, you just have to
It's not it, yeah.
go in there and do
How do
it.
you decide that this is the one that survives?
They tell me, you know, they really do. Like they will talk to me and like I said, like they're, you know, under one of those paintings is like 3 really good paintings that I actually really love. But you know, my conversations with them were like, it's not my time, so I have to go back and I have to kill it. And then, you know, I think my studio practice really does focus on experimentation and risk is the priority. It's not the side thing, it is the focus. Like I actually am looking really, and I spend my time trying to ruin things. You know, that I actually, and like my students will always say to me like, that I romanticize this idea of failure, and I do, because I think that, you know, failure should be like what you're going for. Because that's what, you know, you're gonna get your success if you keep, but it's gonna keep you from being bored, you know, and routine and all of that. Yeah.
Do you recall ever having like conscious thoughts of like shadow time while painting? And did that like influence then what you did at that moment?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the paintings, so I knew about the show. I was making terrible like work. I was in a period of making really bad work, just in general. And Sarah came to me about the show and I was like, worst case scenario, I start like pulling out old paintings and just being like, okay, you know, like let's do this. And I was making really bad work, but and then so basically I knew the title for all of the work that I made, so it was very conscious. And my practice is one where I go on like these epic, I walk and I like do all my, I kind of make up stories and like have like this whole thing going on. So I knew the title and I was like, you know, just waxing about it the entire time I was working and thinking about, you know, like what my experience was with the earth. Yeah.
Could you say something more about that? I'm going to use the wrong word, it was like almost like an assembly line or a.
Conveyor belt
Yes.
mentality. Yeah. Well, because I have this lineage at the Cape, so I'm 5th generation, and we always talk about it. Cape Cod is so haunted. It's a very haunted land in general. And Cape Codders are always talk about the ghosts and the land that we live on. My mother has told me stories about her grandmother coming in, and I do feel like I have very active conversations with my dead relatives up there, and have always. It's always been a comforting kind of feeling. They come, they advise me, they'll send me signals. I've seen crazy shit go down in our little cottage, and anyway, like, so when I had my babies, and like, I could see in this land that we really struggled to keep for the next generation, because the family is full of, just like any family, we fight a lot, and we threaten a lot to sell the land. And, but everybody tries to hold on to it, and it's our kind of generational struggle of what we had to deal with in order to hold on to it. And there's definitely environmental issues that always happen in every generation, that they have to do some kind of extraordinary measure to keep the house and keep the land and keep it, because we're not the Kennedys on Cape Cod by any means. And so I do feel like when I bring my kids up there, and like we're going to the same beach that all my relatives, and in fact like my great-great-grandmother gave that land to the town to make the beach, etc. So we're like really living that life where we're very in touch. And this is I'm trying to simplify it, but basically I feel like genetically, just the fact that it was a matriarchal family, that it was all run by women, that their husbands all died at a very young age, and it was a little strange, but like it just kept happening each generation. So it's just women like on this kind of land, like, you know, with a cow and some chickens, and doing the clamming and doing the fishing and just kind of making it work, that my children also like kind of know these stories and know that they come from a line of like incredibly strong women, and incredibly like looking for the next because we're able to hold this place together a little bit. And so when I became a mom, I had no idea that was gonna like crush me, but somehow it became a very living concept in my mind, and I think it's because of the Cape. But yeah, and then also because my mom got so sick, and my daughter was so sick, it was like I just was like, this is not the right time. Like it didn't feel good because they were in such pain, and it felt horrible for me, like in the order of the way it's supposed to be. It was disordered in some way, or it was like, shouldn't be. So I guess I felt like that too. I don't know if you understand yet. Yeah.
I'm curious about there's an element of landscape, which you've also described your accepted place, and is that something that you ritualize or embrace or struggle with or fight or have to give yourself permission to put?
Yeah.
That? Is it,
Well, like I said, I was really immersed in the figure before this body of work. I think I've always had, I've always loved a good landscape, but I, got into the figure pretty hard and pretty heavy, and when this work started to, this was the first painting, so when that painting happened, I was like, oh my God, this is glorious. It felt like a figure to me. They do feel like figures to me. They feel like bodies to me. And they certainly, I was having these conversations with Georgia O'Keeffe in my studio, where I really did feel like I got to that place because I think I work in a feminist vein. There's a lot of challenges I face in just showing my work and not being censored, because I do face those issues. And so when I went to this, there was I needed to express the heavy issues and everything that was happening these paintings really were born in September and October and November of this year, I just felt like I just needed to say it, and I couldn't say it with the body. I just couldn't. It just, and no matter how I tried to bring it back in, it didn't want to be there. So I just let it be. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else?
It's amazing.
All right.
I'm glad we got some cues.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. So now, for some of you who also came in during the talk, around the corner, we have some hot tea, we have some beverages, there's some food. Maybe we're gonna mill around for a little, have some conversations, and then we are going to turn it over to Lexi and Adit. And we're gonna continue to learn more tonight. This is amazing, thank you.
Which one left?